everyone. Thank you for being patient during that quick little break. We are lucky enough to be joined by Stewart Hillhouse, head of content at Mutiny. Super interesting topic. Can't wait to hear the talk. Stewart, feel free to take it away.
Awesome. Hey everyone, super excited to be here. I'm sure you're just getting jam packed. So I want to thank you for being here and let's get into it. So I'm going to talk about the counterintuitive way to create content that actually converts. So who is this talking head right now? My name's Stewart and I'm the head of content at Mutiny. Mutiny is a conversion platform that allows marketers to turn their existing traffic into pipeline without doing any code or requiring your engineering team to move your website around at all. You can do it all through Mutiny. And in the picture, you can see that in a previous life, I was actually a semi-professional lumberjack. So if you have questions about that, we can chat about it later. But I want to first start and set the stage a little bit about what the realities are of marketing in 2023. So there's three kind of main things that I think about now, especially as I'm creating content, is firstly, your ideal customer persona, your ICP that you might have been selling to last year. There's weird economic conditions that they might now be really hesitant to buy from you. Why is this? Is because they don't want to maybe stick their neck out and try and bring on a new tool that you're selling to them. Just based on budget required, maybe their teams had headcount reduction. There's a lot of reasons why your ICP might be nervous to sell internally. That paired with the uncertainty of where the company might be in a little bit, they're probably pretty nervous to bring on new tools. So now is the time to start building super fans, not just prospects. These are people who actually will buy your thing, when the time's right, but they still want to, consume your content and be part of your company's narrative. But that brings us to the third problem is your company expects content to be creating pipeline and to be operating efficiently. And so you need to still balance this idea of creating pipeline and creating conversions while still also not being super hard selling, because that's just realistically not going to work on your target audience. So with that kind of background, the way I'm starting to think about content and my hot take for today is over-indexing on conversion-focused content actually decreases your conversion rates and makes it harder to prove pipeline for content marketing. All right, so a lot of C's, a lot of conversion words in there. But what does this actually look like in practice? Okay, I'm going to take you through the 3 steps that I think about when we're creating content at Mutiny and show you real examples of how content that isn't focused on driving a new meeting booked or a new free trial sign up actually does a better job at turning readers into pipeline than those conversion focused pieces. So step 1, we always start by getting insights straight from the audience's mouth. So at Mutiny, what we do is we hop on these calls with our customers, with our partners, and other people who are, match our ICP. And we try to unpack the challenges and the problems that they're currently having, and then dig into how they're thinking about solving those problems. So here in this example, this is my friend Charlotte, who works at Clearbit. She's sharing, a real and timely issue that Clearbit is having and how they're trying to fix it. We do this publicly in a webinar format that we call Conversion Secrets Live, because it really, speaks to our practitioner colleagues who are trying things out and trying to make the best what they can. So, but you need to have timely insights about how your prospects are thinking so that you can then, turn that into content and speak back to them in their own words. Step 2 is then turn those insights into a repeatable and practical format. These are the 2 ingredients that any piece of content needs right now. I'm not talking about SEO, really search focused content. I'm talking about editorial content that your, audience actually is going to read versus, just generating sort of really top of funnel traffic from SEO. So the reason I say repeatable is because you want something that your audience can come back to week after week, month after month, quarter after quarter, and they know that it's going to be really good and they're excited for it coming out. The same way you're excited for the next episode of The Last of Us. You can't wait for it to come out. You want your audience to be ready for your next thing, but you also need it to be super practical so that they can actually turn it into action and not just like, oh no, fluffy kind of stuff. So for us, that's a format called playbooks. And you can see here, we've got a huge library of them. And each one of these goes into detail about, the thesis, the growth thesis, the problem, and then the solution and the steps they took to get there. And then the last bit is making sure that you're stringing it together and building like a larger narrative that's not just around your company. So like talking, any good content marketer will know that you should only talk about yourself like 5% of the time. The rest of the time you should be talking about the problem, the life, the bigger narrative of the person who's reading it. You don't want to be talking about yourself all the time. So this is, how you turn a simple interview into a puzzle piece of the bigger picture and then share it across every single channel you have. So this is showing, the same interview I gave presented in a newsletter format, presented in a social format, presented on the website as the actual playbook. And they're all like saying the same things, but from different angles, and they're all optimized for the channel that they're being shared on. So you just need to like string it to a bigger narrative. And it's not just about, that piece of content. It's about the bigger story. All right. So these playbooks sound cool, but do they actually perform? And like, how am I proving the pipeline that's being generated from content? Well, we've seen, and this is a screenshot taken directly from Google Analytics, that visitors on our website who view one of these playbooks are 2 times more likely to book a sales call. And on these playbook pages, we don't actually even have a CTA that says book call. It just has a button that says like, want to learn more about Mutiny? And it actually takes you to a product page. So these pages, even though there's no hard CTA and they're completely ungated, actually make it twice as more likely for someone to turn into pipeline. Let's just look at these numbers here down below. So that first grouping is someone who just comes to our website and doesn't look at a playbook. So they average 1 minute and 48 seconds on the page, and they convert at a 0.2% to a meeting booked. All right, that's cool. Now the next one down is they viewed a playbook. They now average 4 pages per session, meaning they're clicking around, they're actually looking through our website and learning a lot about our product. That's awesome. And they stay on the website 3 times longer. They're over 6 minutes now sitting, looking at our stuff, learning about it, becoming more excited about what Mutiny can do for them. And they convert at twice the rate, now at 0.4%. And the same, these numbers continue to get better as we look at like more than 2 playbooks per session. Now we're getting up into the 8-minute mark where people are like almost spending, an entire 10 minutes on your website, and they're still converting at that higher rate. So that's how we think about these playbooks and how they actually, these non-conversion focused pieces of content actually drive a lot of conversions for us. So let me just kind of summarize what we just talked about and create a framework that you can then take and now apply to your work and the content you're doing. So the first I'd recommend is the idea of get comfortable with zero-click content. This term was coined by my friend Amanda Natividad, and what zero-click content is essentially giving away 80% of your content without needing someone to click a link to go to your website and read the full blog post. Some companies will just share a new blog post as like a one-liner on LinkedIn saying, hey, we wrote a new blog post about this thing. Check it out. Link. That's not going to build an audience. That's not going to build any interest. That's just sort of like lazy content marketing. So giving away all like 80% of the content without a click actually, gets your message across, makes you seem more interesting, and counterintuitively actually leads to more clicks. In my newsletter, I pretty much give away 80% of what that blog post says in the email, so you don't even need to click through. But the click-through rates are always higher than if I just did like a one-liner and then the link plug. Second framework I would recommend is stop producing random acts of content. This is coined by another buddy of mine, Ronnie. and it talks about thinking about that bigger, Ronnie Higgins, and talks about that bigger narrative of how does this piece of content connect to what your prospect's thinking about, and then how does it connect to their bigger career aspirations, like how they're going to convince their CEO that they need to buy that thing, or how they're going to get budget, or how they're going to not get laid off in the next round if that so happens. So create larger narratives around these formats. So for us, instead of just doing these interviews behind closed doors, we do them publicly as a live session series where we bring on 3 marketers at a time to share their stories with people out in the open. And we call them Conversion Secrets Live, and we do them every month. And it just really drives that like groundswell of community engagement as well. And then the last bit here is build future pipeline by leveraging these super fans. My newsletter went out earlier today to like 35,000 people on our email list. We don't have 35,000 customers yet, but all these people are in some way interested in Mutiny. At one point they opted in, raised their hand and said, I want to learn more about Mutiny. I want to read your content. I want to get your newsletter. These are like super fans that you can build up until the point where it actually makes sense for them to buy. That might not be this year. It could be next year, but guaranteed, like the marketing world is small enough that if you have fans, they will follow you from whatever company you go to, and whatever company they go to, they'll want to buy your thing again because they love what you do. So here's just some screenshots of like people posting on LinkedIn, not me prompting them. These are just readers of the newsletter who are super excited about what we're doing. So that's all I'm going to say today. That was a lot to take in, but if you want to see what this looks like in person, go check out our conversion playbooks that I published through our newsletter. So mutinyhq.com/subscribe, or if you were on your phone the entire time, just pull that out and point it at the QR code and it'll take you right to the page. And I would love to have you check out some of our sessions at one point. So thanks so much for taking a listen. And at this point, happy to answer any questions we have.
Awesome. Thanks so much, Stewart. That was super, super interesting. And actually super timely. So the last session was about how to drive our ARR by acting like a media company, basically.
Mm-hmm.
So I think this is super related. You're essentially saying a very similar thing. How do you get your organization on board for moving away from the more traditional tactics, for making sure things are gated, from just the kind of established playbooks to this new approach?
Yeah, I mean, you can always just test, like do the gated stuff, but then also like start wedging that like more the zero-click content into your existing channels and just notice the reaction. Like it might not be, it might not create like a quantitative growth, but you'll start seeing it in your sales calls. Like if you have Gong, go in and start typing in like newsletter or content and see how often prospects will start talking about your content. I guarantee you'll see an increase in people who are actually taking notice and like reading your stuff versus it just being an email, lead gen thing where people just, give me your email and you'll read this PDF. Like I've never read a PDF. Like right. I don't read PDFs anymore. Right. On the idea about like creating thinking like a media company, this is how network TV, this is how streaming platforms, this is how they all do it. This is their playbook. It's not just like, we have your email, we're going to sell you now. It's like, oh, like take a look at this behind the scenes of a new TV show that we're launching. Oh, you watch the Super Bowl? Guess what? There's actually like a post, like an after show that's going to break down what happened. Like there's always the next thing that they're introducing that is relevant to you because you're already in their ecosystem. Yeah. And once you have them in your ecosystem, it's so much easier to cross-sell, to launch new things, to introduce new concepts and ideas because they're already like consuming your stuff. Right. And so I would say that if you're getting pushback and they just want emails, push back and say, okay, but what are we going to do with these emails? Are we trying to close them in like 2 weeks? If you're selling like an enterprise piece of software, you're not going to get a deal in 2 weeks.
Right.
So think about the long term, like get this person on your email. Think about how much you can influence the deal by creating content that is exactly what that person needs to hear at that moment in time to click a light bulb. They have the realization, they talk to their boss, that boss has a realization. You can feed them ideas that they can then spread internally and increase the deal velocity that way.
So I think you touched on this, but I want to give, there's a question here from Andri. Sorry, I think that's how you pronounce your name. If I butchered it, my apologies. How do you get the leadership to understand the indirect value of this and that it won't be instant, but will compound over time? I think this is more about like, how do you bear out the numbers eventually, right? Because eventually that's what they're going to want to know.
Mm-hmm. I mean, you should still have an understanding of the levers within your website of where these leads are coming from. Like if you're a content marketer, in my case, I'm measured on pipeline that comes from the website because I'm bringing people to the website. And so that is, you should still have a complete understanding of that. And that's why we have it met in Google Analytics. You've got a goal, which is like meeting booked. So we started with that. You have to earn trust within your company when you kind of start there. And so if you're able to hit those SQL goals, you then can be a little bit more experimental. So now that we've hit our SQL goals for a number of quarters in a row, I introduced the concept of this owned audience and starting to build more of like this organic content distribution network. And so now my new goal is like subscribers, which aren't as a heavy lift. It's not like book a demo. It's more like, hey, do you want more content like this? You already like it. Cross sell. Here's a new thing. And so the same way any independent creator, on like LinkedIn or Twitter, they'll post a big thread and then at the bottom they'll say, I also have a newsletter, but like no big deal if you join it or not. Maybe don't be as flaky as them because they understand this inherently because they're playing the really, really long game.
Sure.
But we should start taking inspiration from these creators who can go from like 1,000 to 100,000 followers in a year. Like there's no reason if you start acting that way and create content that people actually want, that a brand can't do the same thing.
Awesome. Stewart, thank you. For everybody listening, if you want to start executing on a strategy similar to the one that Stewart is espousing here, similar to what Eric was talking about in the session before, stay tuned for the next session where you're going to learn how to be a one-person content machine. So stay tuned. We're going to take a quick little break. Stewart, thank you so much. Really appreciate it. That was enlightening talk. Everybody hold on for just a little bit.
Thanks, Gary. See you, everyone.